So yeah, hey there, and welcome to what we lovingly refer to as innerVIVID. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Fiona, and we're coming to you from the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people, lands never ceded.
You've rocked up to theme 8 in this Fandango, amazingly. There have been 7 other themes, with 4 to 6 videos in each. Maybe you've waded through the existential angst of all of them, or maybe just some. Or maybe this is your first one. That's fine, whichever way you've come to be here.
So yes, this is theme 8, which we've decided by deed poll to call, So What Now? Over the course of these videos, we've done a lot of pondering and soul-searching, approximately 50% of each of those, thinking about whether or not you might consider yourself to be a spiritual person, and some of the forms that spirituality might take.
We've wondered about our origins, our endings, and various things in between, like fate and ethics, and even purpose. Last theme, we explored the idea of God, or gods, or no God. That was fun, and no one got struck by any lightning that we're aware of, despite the open-top convertible that you were driving in at the time. This time around, we're going to get down to business. If maybe we do have this sense of spirituality to us, then what should, could, or ought we to do about it? Does it change who we are as people? Does it mean we have to start doing certain spiritual things? Can we use the Force to get the TV remote when it's over there on the coffee table? Who left it there anyway? I mean, it makes no sense.
That's a good question, but okay, calming right down now. All right, yep, this theme is about practical things. First steps, second steps, whatever kinds of steps there are. But just before that, one last thing to deal with.
People say, I'm spiritual but not religious. Are spirituality and religion different things? In what sense?
It's worth talking about this, because sometimes the words spiritual and religious get used interchangeably. And spoiler, that might not be right. What do you think, Ruth?
I imagine the difference between spirituality and religion might be defined differently by every person. For me, I tend to think of religion being some sort of organised way of people expressing their faith together, whereas spirituality might be something that we do more as individuals. It's not a perfect differentiation, but in my mind, that's how I hold it together. Especially when people say things like, I'm spiritual but not religious. That tends to mean I have some practice that I do by myself. I do some yoga, or I guess that's something people do together as well, isn't it? But often when I hear that phrase, it might be followed by, I like working in the garden by myself. So it tends, in my experience, to be used more for something that people might do by themselves.
When I think about spirituality, I particularly think of it as the shape of our relationship with our own inner self, with other people, with the environment, and with God or some kind of higher power. And I think the kind of metaphor I like to use for that is the idea of a GPS. So traditional GPSs needed line of sight to 4 different satellites in order to tell you exactly where you are in the world. And I think our spirituality is a bit like this. We have these relationships with ourselves, with others, with God, and with the environment that helps us understand, who we are and where we are in the world. And I've always found that a really helpful idea for what spirituality is about. The other thing I like to think about is that spirituality is about the answers to some questions. So the psychologist E. Stanley Hall, who's the guy who came up with the word adolescent in the early 1900s, he said that there was 3 questions that young people were trying to answer. And those 3 questions are, who am I? What or who do I belong to? And what do I do? I think these questions are spiritual questions. They're the type of questions we're trying to answer in working out, again, who we are and our place in the world. To me, that's spirituality.
Oh, I love that phrase that people are using. I think that a lot of people respond in the census that way, or even if you're at a social gathering, people might say, I'm spiritual but not religious. And I think that what people are saying when they say that is that they recognize that as a human being, there is this part of them that they might call their spirituality, but they are not really drawn to institutionalized religion or formal ways of expressing their spirituality that might seem either outdated, irrelevant, or perhaps have become tarnished because some of the ways that those institutions have behaved and their wrongdoings have been brought to light, which is that's been a really difficult thing for some of our religious institutions. In saying that, when a person says they're spiritual but not religious, I think that there's this deep honouring that we are a mind and a body and a soul, perhaps, that all work together with our emotions and our own personality to kind of create this essence of who we are as a completely unique human being, unlike any human being who's ever lived, which is an absolutely extraordinary thought. But I think that's perhaps what people are expressing. They want to be seen for who they are and not as a member of a larger institution who practices traditions and rituals that they feel alienated from or don't understand.
So I think about this in terms of like a Venn diagram, you know, the kind of overlapping circles where there's a shared area, but then there's also these separate areas. So, you know, so spirituality and religion. So like religion for me names kind of official structures that house things like liturgy, ritual, sacred texts, sacred official people like, you know, priests and things like that. And spirituality more names the kind of subjective investment that people have in their own lives and in life itself as a realm of meaning and possibility. And sometimes these things overlap, right? So you can have a spirituality that sits very much within a religious structure. But you can also have a spirituality that sits completely outside of any religious structure at all. Likewise, you can be squarely within a religious structure and have no spirituality at all, right? Or you can have a vibrant spirituality. So these things can overlap, and for different people, you know, they kind of move in and out of different zones of this Venn diagram. And I think that there's kind of, you know, possibilities and dangers in any position, really. I think what's good, I would say, about religion, like religion is good at getting people together. Religion is good at creating communities, right? And I think that's a good thing. And the danger of kind of spirituality that kind of simply floats free of any structure is it often can become just this radically individualist enterprise, which I think is especially a danger in kind of 21st century capitalist Western countries. Whereas the danger of like religious structures is that they can be confining, suffocating. They can have often strict boundaries between who's in and who's out, and I think that's kind of problematic. And spirituality is about a kind of rediscovering a kind of vibrancy and engagement and passion that oftentimes the structures themselves can't give you or even are against. So, yeah.
I think often when people think of religion, they think of institutionalized religion. And we are very much aware of some of the failings of institutions. I think it is possible to have spirituality separate to religion, but when spirituality and religion come together, it can be a very beautiful thing. So I think spirituality is that which recognizes there is more to life than it seems, and there is something or someone greater than us who's present. And some would suggest more than present is actually caring and holding So I think that would be it.
I don't think they're the same, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive either. So religion for me is more of an organised way of worshipping your higher power, if that's what your faith structure leads you to. But it's a more formalised way of understanding what you believe in. And it may include some rules or guidelines, but it's a more formalised structure which other people may follow with you. Spirituality for me is that sense of a fourth dimension, something that can't easily be explained, but you know it when you feel it. It's difficult to put into words. Now, you can have, for me, a spiritual experience during, say, a religious worship, and you might be going through a ritual that you go through every week, and for some reason, one time just brings you to tears that has never done that before. For me, that's a sense of spirituality working with a religious experience and working within a religious worship. And there's nothing to say you can't be on a spiritual journey but also find religion on your path. So I think the two can interact, and when they interact well, it can be an amazing experience. But they are definitely separate entities, but working together.
I think they can be different things. When I think about the two, spirituality feels to be a more individual thing, and religion, even though it comes with all sorts of negative connotations, I think is about people gathering together, and because I think as human beings we need other people to sort of make meaning, and so religion gives a box or a bucket that we can tip all sorts of different people to make meaning together. There's a really important place for doing work on ourselves, but I think we need to be with other people in relationship.
I understand spirituality to be a sense of something that is going on beyond this physical world, so something beyond what we can actually see and touch. When I think about the word religion, I think about that more in terms of an established set of beliefs and doctrines and practices that you might engage in. In the Christian context that I'm in, I believe that both spirituality and religion work well together, and they're kind of complementary.
I like to use a metaphor to answer this question about spirituality and religion. I imagine spirituality to be like water. It's kind of everywhere, it's part of everything, and it's fluid, and it can take different shapes and different forms. And religion is like a vase that holds the water. And the vases can be different shapes, but they reveal what the water is like. And very often, a good vase will act like a lens through which you can see the world. So the water is held within this thing that is the vase, but doesn't block the water. A vase that is opaque doesn't allow the light to come through and to allow that spirituality, the water, to shape the way we view the world. And so good religion done well, holds spirituality in such a way that it allows us to view the world in a particular way and interact with the world in a particular way. So that's kind of the relationship I see between the two.
I think spirituality, in my way of seeing it, is this recognition that there's more to life than we perceive using our five senses. Religion is more, I believe, an organised method of dealing with that, and an approach to how to unpack it and how to, if you like, enhance it and give a deeper meaning to it. It does tend to mean that it then becomes structured, and will naturally you'll end up finding that you're part of a group which we generally call a church or a mosque or a, whatever else, shrine or whatever. They all have slightly different rules, although by and large, they're all very similar in terms of, love one another and love whoever or whatever it was created you. They're the basics. So, as I say, religion is really more, to me, it's more of an approach to strengthen that spirituality.
I definitely think they're different. I think that word we use, religion, is about the shape of particular spirituality that people have, that in many ways what's important about religions is what they contain, which is the things that help people connect with their inner life, with God, with other people, with the world that they live in. And I think religions give a particular shape or flavour to that spirituality. But I think religion helps to give a bit of a framework to those spiritual practices that people engage in. It's really interesting that across religions, we all seem to have quite similar practices. So in most religions, you'll find things like prayer and meditation and even, giving can be a spiritual practice. And all those types of things, they appear over and over in different religions. And I think part of that is because, again, over thousands of years of human history, we've actually learnt that these spiritual practices have a significant impact on our spirituality. They help them. And so that's why we use them. Now, I'm not saying that makes all religions the same, but it's interesting that the practices that are used across different religions tend to be pretty similar.
I don't think that spirituality and religion are different. They're the same sides of the same human capacity, but they're just different ways of describing the same thing. That's my opinion. And it's my opinion because I am both a spiritual and a religious person. But I understand behind the word religion, there's a whole lot of baggage. And so I'm actually quite comfortable with the idea of just saying that I'm spiritual. I hope we just don't throw out the idea of religion, because just being spiritual and not religious doesn't completely encapsulate, at least in my understanding of that faith belief perspective, the whole possibility of what spirituality and religion is. Religion is a way of organising and collecting spirituality. We haven't always done that well, and that's why there's baggage. But I hope that doesn't close you off to the possibility that you can't be religious. Sometimes it takes a bit of a journey to actually demystify the language, to identify that religion is not the wrong or the bad thing. It's what we as humanity have done in the name of religion that is what has become the baggage that we've created for ourselves.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground there. The long and short of it might be that you can be a spiritual person. But if you get a bunch of spiritual people together, that might be for religious stuff. Religions tend to be for organising spirituality and people together. Andrew has a quick way of thinking about this.
I'm spiritual but not religious. Are spirituality and religion different things, and in what sense?
Yeah, they are. And look, I'm a great believer that spirituality is a much broader concept, and that religion is our way to try and pin it down to something that's manageable and doable.
I like that. Of course, it is more complicated than that, as we just saw. You know, I've certainly met spiritual people who were not religious. And I met a lot of spiritual people who also were religious. But if I'm honest, I've met people who fit in a third grouping. The third group is religious people who are not very spiritual. Now, each of these ideas are possible.
But what about you? Where do you fit? It's totally up to you, right? What do you think?